Americans, which city's parking experience has questioned your sanity to drive to that city again, and why was that experience so traumatizing? Philly, because the PPA. Those M are so terrible that they have their own show called Parking Wars. They make me regret buying a house in Philly without a garage. Also NYC, it costs $50 to get into the city, then $1 million to park in a garage. Got a $300 parking ticket near South and 2nd for parking in a handicapped spot. I thought I hit a gold mine for finding parking that close to South on a Saturday night. Nope. Just didn't see the handicapped sign that was the size of a playing card 12 featuring above my spot. The PPA can shove it. San Francisco. The streets are crap and people can't drive. Everybody is sightseeing instead of looking at what's in front of them. The hills are a nightmare. Better hope your parking brake doesn't give out. And God forbid you forget to turn your wheels when parking. Got a bunch of tickets for that before I learned my lesson. Now it's so ingrained I do it everywhere, like in my garage. I live in LA and spent a lot of my childhood in both NYC and Boston. The only place that makes me want to say frick this is San Francisco. People in that city can't drive and there's no fricking parking spots. Philadelphia. You want to see a grown man that looks like he could eat nails, break down and cry? Go to the Philadelphia Parking Enforcement Agency and watch someone try to get their vehicle out after it's been towed. Washington DC. You can drive around for hours and never find an open spot, and eventually you give in to the $28 parking garages. Was going to say DC. I've been towed twice. If you do manage to park on the street, there are 5 signs that all say different things and change every 10 feet. I've driven in NYC, Philly, NJ, Washington DC and crap even Connecticut. For years no problem. Moved to Tampa and in my 30-mile commute I debate murder, suicide, manslaughter and murder every freaking mile. Just realized you said parking. NYC is hands down the worst. I know you read it wrong and all, but driving I-75 by Tampa, man, the craziest drivers I have ever experienced. Not even close. It is painful to park in Boston, but I'm actually really thankful that I grew up there because now everywhere I go parking is cheaper than I expect. Parking isn't cheap, but I've never actually had an issue finding somewhere to park. Chicago was stupid enough to sell their parking rights to a third-party provider. Enter a unit of street soldiers who are ruthless in their ticketing. Also, kiosks emerged for purchasing your street parking, but these kiosks only accept credit cards and coins, no bills. I used to watch a show on A&E called Parking Wars, and although I've never experienced it firsthand, if that show is anything close to reality, Philadelphia is Dante's 7th circle of heck. The bureaucracy and bulls is out of this world. It is even worse than that show depicts. PPA is ruthless. Goddamn San Francisco. Hate parking in that city. Driveways taking up half the street parking, and they absolutely will call and get you towed if you're even microscopically encroaching on them. Ticket fairies who are so on top of expired parking, I swear to God they must be psychic. Bonus points for the stupid hills. Between trying to parallel park and the stop signs at the top of every freaking one, that city cost me about 10,000 miles on my clutch. I personally think parking in Los Angeles is worse than New York, but what takes the cake for me is parking in New Orleans. People don't give a crap about being over 2 feet from the curb, or parking right up to the corner so you can't see when you want to turn. They'll also parallel park right in the center of a spot that 2 cars could easily fit into. Then you've got the territorial neighborhood parking Nazis who leave notes on your car saying this is my spot when it's a public street in a busy part of town with no parking restrictions. I need to lie down. Depends. LA is heck on earth with traffic. Parking is almost impossible in NY and Washington is so freaking expensive. Oh, and in Philly your car will probably get stolen. Trust me, mine has been. I live in the bustling metropolis of Kenosha, WA, and let me tell you, on a Friday or Saturday night downtown I might have to park a block or rarely more from my destination. Also, if you're trying to get to work at 5 PM, I work at a restaurant, you're up crap creek buddy. Better give yourself an extra 5 minutes for traffic or plan on explaining to your boss why you're late. Good ole Wisconsin traffic. Seattle. I lived about 10 miles from the place I was going to for a job interview, downtown. I left an hour before it started. I arrived 20 minutes late. I was brand new to the city from the Midwest, with tears streaming down my face in the elevator as I try to gather myself. Kid gets out a floor early and tells me to have a nice day. FML. Midtown Manhattan. Parked on a numbered side street overnight and came back around 8:30 am to 2 tickets on my windshield for parking about an inch into a loading dock area that went active at 7 am. Gladly paid the $40 overnight next time after getting fined $192. Tickets where I live are maybe $15.35. Philadelphia's straight up bulls. You have the parking authority buttholes patrolling each city block. Finding a legal spot to park in is an exercise in futility. NYC is another major pitter. There's non-stop traffic and it's insane trying to navigate that place. Philly. I swear to God you'll look around and see no signage or parking meters. Leave your car, come back and somehow you are in 1 hour parking or a bike was parked in front of a beater camouflaged by a strategically placed bush and you've got to ticket. The parking authorities also love to ticket and tow. Not only is it their job, they must get some sick, twisted pleasure out of it. The PPA tried to ticket me on a phantom expired meter. There was literally none even on the block, but they got my license plate number wrong lol. Camden, New Jersey. We returned to our car parked on a Camden street after visiting with friends who live there, and found it sitting on cinder blocks with the tires stolen. You flew too close to the sun. Not traumatizing, but I will never drive to Chicago again. Parked in a spot that I thought was okay. Back end was just slightly into the red. Went to eat. Came back. No car. They freaking ticketed and towed in less than an hour just because my bumper was a few inches too close to the corner. Had to pay ticket and impound fees. Think it ended up being around $300. Never again. I've learned never to overestimate the empathy of parking enforcement officials. Anywhere. They're a vindictive bunch who can't think in nuances. Jesus freaking Christ. Seattle. I drove there for the first time and literally spent 3 hours in what I honestly believe purgatory will be like if I was sent there. Nonsensical intersections. Narrow roads that wrap halfway around an island before you can turn off of them. Tunnels that turn into theme park rides where you are on a floating piece of road next to a Ferris wheel. It was ridiculous. After 2 hours of not finding somewhere to park, I seriously considered just crashing onto a median to make the nightmare end. But I found a park one island over instead. With help, I eventually found off-street parking near my friend's apartment. Then I had to figure out the stupid text pay system. Never again. If I ever move there, I'll drive to the used car lot and sell it the first day for bus pass money. My GPS has a field day with Seattle. The flyovers cause it to reroute me every few meters and it's incredibly frustrating. Especially because so many of the streets in downtown Seattle are one-ways. On the opposite spectrum, took a trip to Madison with a friend who came in from Newark. I parked in a parking structure downtown. When we were driving out of structure later that day, she offered to help pay for parking. My response: other parking cost $1.50. She tries to hand me some cash. $1.50. What are people paying in NY when they don't flinch at $150 for parking? I went to school in NYC back in the day. It was a few blocks south of Union Square, in Greenwich Village. Usually I took the train into Penn Station, then either walked or took another local train to Union Square Station. One day I happened to wake up too late to catch the train, but I could still make it if I drove. I drove 2 hours up to NYC, spent an hour circling the blocks looking for a parking spot before class, then turned right back around and drove 2 hours back home because frick parking in the village. Seattle on a weekend. I was only there for one day, but I will make a blanket judgment about that place on that one experience. San Francisco. I parked in the hotel parking lot. No joke, took me 30 minutes to exit because of the backup in the garage. WTF. That 30 minutes cost me an extra $15. I used to think that Seattle was the worst. Lots of one-way, narrow streets made worse by people parking on both sides. Their crappy hills and crappy intersections made it a bee to try and get around there and especially park. because half the spots were tow away and the other half were taken. Then I moved to the SF Bay Area. I don't go anywhere anymore. Been here almost a year and have not been to SF and don't plan to. Took a trip to New Orleans. I had a rental car and parked it on the street near an intersection. Now I lived in Virginia for a while and knew about a law where you had to park so many feet from the intersection or get a ticket. So I figure I'm 10 feet from the intersection and that's good. After 3-4 hours we come back and the car is gone and come to find out it's been towed because it was blocking the intersection. We took a taxi to the impound lot and paid the $150 fee to get it out. I spoke to someone working at the hotel about this and apparently this is a pretty common thing the city does to rental cars and cars without off-state plates. So anyway, next time I go back I'll skip the rental cars and just deal with taxes. NYC. It isn't the traffic that worries me. It isn't the suicidal taxes. It's not even the pedestrians who apparently lost the ability to read signs. It's the goddamn mafia that is NYC Parking Authority. I've gotten tickets for being too far away from a curb, only 7 feet away from a fire hydrant instead of 10, and even an expired registration for a registration that wasn't expired. It's my own personal heck some days. Portland, Maine. You can't park on the street at night, so you have to park in a garage. But the garage is shut down at like 11 PM and don't open until about 7 AM. So if you're like me and don't realize this, you wind up being homeless for a night. Parking at the Coliseum to see USC games is the worst parking experience ever, especially for big games. The actual parking lot is so small and gets full in advance because of all the people that have the parking passes, so if you want to park inside you have to buy a parking pass off StubHub. You end up parking in those little private parking lots with one attendant and only one way in and one way out, and it's usually $60, but for big games we've paid as much as $150. People that live close will let you park out in front of their house or even in their driveway for around $50, but that's too shady for me. I know we could leave our cars at Walmart or other places and take a lift or use the train that drops you off in front of the stadium, but we don't. We only go to 1-2 games a year now, but we always dread the parking situation. Traffic is horrible in LA, but try heading that way on a weekend with USC hosting a big game. Any city for me. I'm assuming. I've been to NYC a few times and I can't bear being in a car there. It's so crowded in the streets and hard to find parking. I feel so claustrophobic and overwhelmed in a vehicle that is stuck in traffic between a million other cars and people. I think if I lived there, I would only own a bike. Seattle. There is no freaking street parking unless you get there at like 3 AM, and the city has allowed developers to dig up all of the parking lots to build cheaply made, overpriced condos and apartments. Also, DC is a goddamn nightmare. Definitely San Francisco. Don't drive stick anymore, but years ago just trying to find a place to park was insane. And those goddamn hills. Sitting at a red light looking straight ahead yet staring up into the sky waiting nervously for the light to turn green. Montreal. You can turn left on lights and the roads are too thin. I was there for one day and almost got into 2 accidents and was a witness to one. To top it all off, my GPS was acting up and had to take many detours. Reading all of these and I am realizing how lucky I am living in Phoenix. Not only is our traffic pretty amazing compared to other big cities, but parking is a breeze. I went downtown on Wednesday night and found street parking across from the place I was going. Yes, it had a meter for $1.50 an hour. The most expensive parking I have seen here is during a major sporting event downtown, and you pay $20 to be about 250 feet from the stadium. Crap, our hockey arena is so far out in the boonies that parking can be had for free if you play your cards right. Oh, I have one. Okay, so back in the late 90s, 97 or 98, don't remember, I was working right off the intersection of 285 and 75, next to the convention center, in ATL. Not saying which building or where I worked, but I parked in a parking garage below street level. So this one day I got off work, and as I was exiting the garage to get onto I-75 and head home in the direction of Marietta, a small SUV, long time ago, but I think it was a RAV4, exits the garage in front of me. This SUV stays in front of me all the way onto the interstate, and we accelerated to the normal 5-lane 85 miles per hour early commute speed when I noticed something moving on the back of the vehicle in front of me. Is that an opossum? Number. That's a freaking rat. Yes, it's a huge freaking rat, about half again the size of a tomcat, attempting to find purchase on the bumper. About that time the vehicle hits one of the expansion spanners on the road and lurches, dislodging that cylinder and depositing it on the road. The rat doesn't really flip, but rather surfs its feet, tail whipping around in a blur, and gradually slows enough to shoot between my wheels. I look into my rearview mirror and see it come to a stop. Now I'm sure this happened in only a second or two, but time just seems to slow down at moments like this, so I got the whole scene burned into my memory in slow motion. The rat starts waddling, showing obvious signs of serious road rash as it tries to scurry off the interstate. Too late though. It makes it a foot over the dotted line when the semi-truck following about 8 to 10 car lengths back hits the front half of the rat. Like an overzealous doctor squeezing a cyst, the rat gets violently inverted. Everything once inside the rat is now flying in a gory fountain over the lane behind me. Sure enough, a small commuter car plows directly through the rat wash, coating it like Mississippi mud. The car immediately does a swervy slowdown and turns on his wipers. But by this time I had to look away because I've been driving at 80 miles per hour without paying any attention for far too long. The last image I saw was of rat innards being smeared by windshield wipers with little bits and gobbets flying to the sides. What has been seen? Upper class neighborhoods in Los Angeles. They usually have 5-6 different signs on one post. Usually boils down to not you, not here, not ever. Hoboken, NJ. Frick that place. Literally, left car for 24 hours, got a 275 frick you and a boot. Impossible to find parking there. Great bars, but will take train next time to come in. Dallas, TX. On the weekend evenings, parking just doesn't exist, so we park outside of downtown and ride the train in. It's way faster and way cheaper. Outside of the obvious choice of NYC, Ferndale, MI, suburb of Detroit that got way too cool, way too quickly, and there is nowhere near enough parking to accommodate the flux of people who want to be there. There is no rage like circling a public lot for 30 minutes, waiting for someone to leave, and then having some rat bastard who turns into the parking lot at precisely the right moment snipe the spot you've been waiting for. Oh, and State College, PA. What the actual frick? DC, if you manage to find a spot on the street, you can come back to realize the Secret Service moved it somewhere. Totally unexpected. Have fun finding it. Do Canadians count? If so, Tobermory. Not only is driving in the downtown a nightmare, they implemented paid parking this year. $3 an hour, 1 hour minimum, 3 hour maximum. If you're up there for the weekend and need groceries, boom, pay $3 in parking. Want to stop at the ice cream store for literally 2 minutes? $3 in parking. And downtown driving is just a nightmare, because there are hordes of tourists with no situational awareness. I mean strolling down the middle of the road at a picture-taking pace, ignoring the cars honking at them. Levels of no situational awareness. And the main street is one way, so if you miss your parking spot you have to go all the way around, back out onto the highway and back into the city. I legit wanted to abandon my car in Toronto trying to find parking. Didn't know there was a Blue Jays game that day. Seattle isn't the worst in the world, but I don't understand how it isn't better. Not only is most of the city on 2 different grids that intersect at 45 degrees, but the whole thing has burned down and wasn't rebuilt to be better. Add randomly placed one-way roads and a crazy amount of Asian Canadian tourists who apparently have never even seen a car before getting there, and it's a frustrating clusterfuck. Seattle. Sometimes you have to parallel park just to pull over because another car is coming directly at you on a 2-way street with only 1 lane. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.